Okay, welcome everybody to another episode of Real Talk with Amber. I'm here with my friend Kari Rhinehart. She was my first best friend ever in life,
True.
kindergarten. We lost touch for quite a while, and unfortunately, we were brought back together through some pretty tragic circumstances through another friend of mine. But we'll get into that in just a minute. But I want to welcome Kari to the show. Hey, Kari.
Hi, thank you.
Of course. So, Kari, I just want you to start with your story, if you would. Tell me about um, Emma. Emma is the base of all of this, and then how it developed into what it is now.
So Emma, there's a lot. So Emma was 13 years old and went to an eye exam. Her dad took her, and he texted me after the exam and asked me if I knew what optic nerve papilledema, the term for optic nerve swelling was. And long story short, I did, and was immediately concerned and had him bring her to me where I worked in the ER, and we checked her in and found out that day that she had a brain tumor. And it turned out to be the worst of the worst kind of brain tumors, and not the kind of brain tumors that kids get. So it was a glioblastoma, and it was inoperable, and we had 3 months and 13 days before she passed away. About a year later, I found out there was a lot of contamination in our city and where we had lived, and specifically very close to where I had lived. And an investigation was done by a local media because another mom, Stacy, who does my nonprofit with me, had started to see all these other kids at Riley and these families that they knew because her stepson had leukemia. And she started thinking there are too many like familiar faces here. And that's how it kind of all got launched. And then it has kind of snowballed from there. We, of course, we started mapping the kids. And when we mapped them, it was really disturbing. And then we started knocking on doors and just asking questions. And one thing led to another, and we couldn't get anywhere. And then we finally got hooked up with an organization, Edison Wetlands, and they helped us through FOIA requests and their expertise in environmental issues and contamination. And they helped us fund, because we kept saying we have to find a way to come up with money to test, because we have to show it's in people's homes or they're not going to do anything. And last summer in July of 2018, actually on Emma's, it would have been her 17th birthday, the report came out, and we were able to show it was getting into people's homes. And now the EPA has identified a plume in the area and put in remediation systems. They're starting to clean up. But then we also just found out that there is a second plume that's been identified in another very close to the same area, a second plume. And we were concerned about this site to begin with, and we've asked many times about it, but we started with the Amphenol site for specific reasons based on data that we had seen, historical data. So
Okay, so to back things up a little bit, first of all, what is the name of your not-for-profit?
It's If It Was Your Child.
If It Was Your Child. And then we're located in Franklin, Indiana, correct?
Yeah, we lived in
You're in
Franklin.
Greenwood now, though, correct?
I live in Greenwood now, yeah.
Okay.
But
and when you say plume, and I don't remember the second word you said, I've seen you type it on social media before. Ampa something.
Amphenol.
Amphenol. So can you describe what that is? What do these terminologies mean?
A plume is just an area of contamination, and actually there are multiple plumes technically within the one area. So you have the sewer, which is contaminated, so there's a plume in the sewer. There's the groundwater, that's groundwater contamination. That's a plume. You can kind of think of it like an underground cloud, but a plume can be groundwater, soil, in the sewers, in the air. We have all of those in this site. And then Amphenol was the company that was there in business, that owned the property, and there had been some other business. They had acquired a business that was located on that site. That business had already had issues with contamination that they knew where they were dumping into the sewers when they bought the property. So they assumed the liability, and then probably also had some issues of their own where more contamination happened. But all these years, we kept getting told, yes, we know that there was a problem on the Amphenol site, but there is it's called a pump and treat that's on the site. It's taking care of it. And we kept arguing, like, there's no scientific data that backs up that this plume, that this contamination didn't move off site. And that's important because directly across the street is a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, so we're not just talking about an industrial area where you would expect it to possibly be. We're talking about people's homes. So, and it's very close to the main, like, downtown area of Franklin.
So to me, this is starting to sound sort of Aaron Brockovich-like, right?
we hear that a lot.
Yeah. And then also for people, just to kind of grasp what this is, because people are familiar with the Flint, Michigan crisis with their water right now, right? So how is this different? Do you know?
Than the Flint? Well, in some, Flint was, the water itself was fine. The problem in Flint was that they were using a chemical to treat the water that turned out to be very corrosive on the pipes that were leading into people's homes. So the water that they maybe put out from the actual plant was fine, but by the time it got into your faucet, it was not. There's a book by the doctor who was the whistleblower, and I read it, and it's remarkable. We're in the same EPA region, and it's remarkable the similarities that we presented data over and over again, scientific data, scientific experts who said there's a problem, and over again, no one listened. So that for me was the overwhelming theme. Like, there were conversations in this book that this doctor had with the EPA that I swear I've had the same conversation, just verbatim. So it's remarkable that they continue to get away with, state, local, federal regulators get away with this scheme of how we just put you off. And I think what's similar across the board in all of the cases is they're banking on everyone just giving up. Just, you get frustrated and you walk away. So they're banking on it. And I can see why it works, because it's incredibly frustrating.
But you and Stacy have been just like pounding the pavement. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have worked with Aaron Brockovich. You have gone to Washington to try to get support in this. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the first time we went to Washington, Aaron reached out to us and we had a conversation, and she was beginning to work on a database where people could report. And she's kind of supported us from a distance, and also with this database we've helped. But if anything else, we were appreciative for her to even mention us, because people know her name. And so unfortunately, it takes celebrity some time to get attention on things when it shouldn't. So but we did go to DC twice. We work with, it's called Environmental Defense Fund. They're the largest environmental defense agency in the world. And because they knew of our battles with TCE specifically, and that the EPA was starting to roll back some of the things, they were tabling these discussions. TCE was on the list of the top 10 carcinogenic chemicals that the EPA was going to reevaluate. What are the limits for it? Should it even be allowed? And before the new administration came in, that was all but off. Like, TCE was looking like it was going to be virtually illegal for anyone to use, except in very, very controlled, small instances. But they've tabled that. And so the regulators have. So they asked us to come and share our stories. And we've been there twice. The second time we went was when Michael Dorson was being nominated by Trump to head up the oh gosh, I'm going to blank it, but he was nominated for the EPA, the Toxicology and Chemistry Division of some sort, as the director. And there were very big concerns because every study he's ever done as a chemist has come out in favor of the chemical. And so he was very pro chemical company.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wanted us to come out and talk about that to the regulators before they, and we went to the nomination hearings before they made that decision, because they felt like it was important that they hear how TCE affects people every day in their lives. And ultimately he didn't get the seat because through some FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act, he works for the University of Cincinnati, and they pulled his emails between big chemical companies, and he was promising basically, I'm going to pull back this regulation and that regulation, and you guys will be happy about this. And he withdrew himself.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of our political system right now. And I've seen you be attacked on social media. It's just so crazy to me. Like, here is a mom who has lost her teenage daughter, and she's simply fighting so that your kids don't have to go through this same shit, and you're beating her up. You're politicizing your child's welfare. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're doing.
It's amazing, like, the way, we have been fortunate to have some pretty significant media attention, but, like when the New York Times article came out, they used something about a Trump County votes, or Trump County, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it really irritated me because in that whole article, the only thing that really talked about the fact, and this was a humongous article, like 200 paragraph article, was like a paragraph and a half that talked about the politics of the area or the people involved. And I'm openly not a Trump voter. But there were literally people commenting, well, I guess they got what they voted for.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I had to stop reading on the New York Times after they posted it. I couldn't read the comments anymore because it was appalling. No matter who you vote for. And I've never once gone to my friends, my family who are pro-Trump and been like, it's your fault. This is happening.
Yeah.
Because you voted for Trump and I didn't. So that means you did this to me. Yeah. Never, ever. But yeah, even to say that to a stranger, it just blows my mind how anyone could equate those two together. Not to mention, no matter who you vote for, ever, you're not going to always agree with every part of their politics, period. So
you disagree with certain parts of what the person you elected says. You can do that.
Over and over again, what we see, and I just was talking to somebody about this today, you see A plus B equals Y in people's minds. And it's astonishing to me.
Absolutely. Well, I want people to, the point of this podcast is, like I said, to talk about shit that nobody wants to talk about. But also I want people to be able to walk away from this and know what they can do to take action in their own communities. Kari, you're a RN, correct?
I am.
Yeah. So Kari is an RN. She used to work in an ER. She now, I think, I'm totally assuming, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you've taken on more of like a nursing role, but in personal care, correct?
Yeah, I do home health now.
Yeah. So in order to allow time to do stuff like this interview or
part of that,
door knocking and all of your not-for-profit stuff as well. So
I went from working full-time to part-time, which isn't pleasant or fun for us.
Yeah.
But it's just, it has to happen in order for me to,
Absolutely. So for parents or people who aren't parents but just have a passion for children, what can they do to ensure their own children's safety? Because I would hope that this interview would spur them into action to be like, what are we drinking? Where are we living?
So what we know is, at first we felt like we were so alone and so unique in this. And what we know is that we're not, that this is a problem that is happening all over the country. What's unique about us is that we found out, and that we, people ask us if they should move. Should I leave my house? Should I, there are people that have honestly thought about abandoning their mortgage, letting their homes be foreclosed on, because they want to just walk away. And I get that. But the problem is, when you walk away and you go somewhere else, it may be 30 years before two stubborn jackasses like Stacy and I come along and find it and expose what's happening. And so knowledge is obviously the power in this situation. So the thing is, a lot of these sites and whatnot are like, they're public. There's public information out there, but you have to go looking for it, which is unfortunate. Indiana, one of the bad problems about Indiana and other states are, depending on where you are, when you buy a house here, there's no disclosure. There's no legal requirement to disclose if you live near a contamination site. So like, you have a Superfund site near you. Other states make you and your seller's disclose that. I would say, if you're fortunate to live in a state where you get that when you go to close on a house, you should absolutely look into that. Go to the public website, go to your state environmental management. Our state has a virtual file cabinet, which is appalling, actually. And it's
really?
horrifically hard to navigate. And that's how they continue to tell us they're going to communicate with everyone, which is ridiculous, because you'd have to know that there was a problem somewhere first to go look for it. So, and then you'd have to be able to pull that data and then know how to interpret an environmental engineer report. Good luck with that for the average person. It's just not something, and we hear it all the time, like, wow, just the other day, an EPA official said, I think you could get your PhD in this. And that's not, it's not something I want my PhD in. It's something that has happened over years and years of studying and, being fortunate to have the right people placed in our path and the right resources to help us, the human resources who want to help us out of the goodness of their hearts.
So if someone suspects this, who, like, in terms of an organization, or is there anyone like EPA? I mean, where would you turn? Where would you start?
Well, I will say we started with the organizations you would expect. You should start with your state and your federal. The first thing we were told is by the state that site, the Amphenol site, has a pump and treat on it. It's fine. And they even told the mayor that. And he took them at their word for that. And I understand why he did back then. Now, why it continues to happen is beyond me. But the media was our friend, because we started knocking on those doors and saying, we have an issue. Start just talking to people, people who've lived around you for a long time. Just having the knowledge of, knowing how many kids had cancer is kind of how we started. So there are definitely, the Environmental Working Group is a great resource. The Environmental Defense Fund obviously has great resources. They're more on the political side and changing legislature. But like, Environmental Working Group even has an app that you can use on your phone, and you can, like, say you use Suave shampoo. You can type in Suave shampoo and it will tell you, it grades it as far as its health. Yeah, because health and beauty products are a big area where we are way behind. There's no regulation on those, So, or a million other things. Knowing the water quality in your home, having simple testing done to show, how many, you can buy the the zero filter, just a home filter thing. And it comes with a little meter that you stick in your water. And I just got one actually not long ago, just out of sheer curiosity. We filter our water anyway, but tap water here has 350, and that's through a municipal water source, treated water, 352 parts of dissolved solids in tap water.
Wow.
Right? So do we know what the solids are? No.
Right. Well, I've learned that you can actually take your water, I think it is, to Home Depot and have it tested. It takes a few weeks to get a report back.
Yeah. Yeah, there are
So,
home testing kits and whatnot. I don't know what theirs cost, and obviously that's always something. If you live on a well, you can ask that that water be tested by your local county. Usually they're only going to look at it for stuff like E. coli and bacteria like that. But I know that the state was testing local wells here, and some people have given us their local well reports, and they were testing for everything: heavy metals, VOCs. Cyanide was found in some of the wells. That's been a big problem in the area. So there are resources, and
yeah,
unfortunately there's like no one good place, but you have to be your advocate. And I will say the other great thing we have now that nobody had 20 years ago, you Google it.
yeah, for sure.
Google it. Just put a little bit of time and effort into it,
Right. And I think what you said before also is huge, and that is like, prepare for a long journey. This is not,
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want the truth and you
Right.
really want to help your community,
Yeah.
you better prepare, because there's going to be pushback, because unfortunately, a lot of
Absolutely.
people have been purchased.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of companies have been purchased. So,
Well, and even from private citizens, one thing that we struggle with is people have an emotional attachment to I'm getting invaded by my children. That's okay. I'm on a podcast right now. So my son's obsessed with podcasts. So this is great. What's the podcast name? He wants
Real
to
Talk with
Sam.
Amber.
What's it called? Sorry.
Real Talk with Amber.
Oh, nice. I'm gonna add that on Apple. Are you
Sorry.
on Apple Podcast?
No, not now. Go away.
Okay.
This is real talk. This is
life.
Yes, this is how they only listen to me if I'm talking to someone else. Only. That's the only time. But anyway, so we get obviously accused of being emotional moms, and
Yeah, right.
I will absolutely be the first to tell you I'm very emotionally invested in this, but that doesn't mean I'm not rational either. But one thing we find is that people, so let's say if I criticize the school, for example, the school tested because they're very close to these areas, they tested 2 elementary schools in August.
Mhm.
And they did 1 round of testing, and then at that point, and their test at that point came back non-detect or below the limit. When we saw that they had detections, but even though they were below the limit, we explained thoroughly that means that it's there. And so
Right.
if it's there, your next question, even if it's under the limit, your next question has to be, why is it here?
Right.
So we pushed and we said, you need to test more. And when that wasn't going to happen, and I understand because the state environmental management told them literally, you don't need to do any more testing. You're good, which is crazy because the state's own guidelines for this testing says you need to do it 4 times. It needs to be seasonal at least, but they still told them that, right? So when we criticize that publicly, and not the people, but the actual decision of that, organization, it was taken as we were bashing very specific individuals. And I told someone today, it's like if you criticize someone or you criticize the schools, and that person's sister teaches at the school,
Mm-hmm.
their human and innate reaction to that is, well, Betty teaches there and she's a good person, and Betty wouldn't do, you know what I mean? And she's so nice, and the kids love her, and she would never put those kids in harm's way, and blah, blah,
Right.
blah. I can't believe they're bashing Betty. Well, I'm not bashing Betty.
Right.
Right? Now, I have a problem with the fact Betty doesn't want to stand up, but
Right.
I'm not bashing Betty.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same for the city and when you talk about elected officials, it is our obligation as a citizen
Absolutely.
to critique and analyze and look at and call for change and action on someone, an elected official. And I don't care if you think he's the nicest guy ever and he mows your grandma's grass when she's sick.
Right.
In this position, this role, that's what I'm talking about.
Right. These are the expectations that we have.
Right.
And if he fails to meet those expectations, we're going to call him out.
and you shouldn't run for office if you can't handle it.
Right.
It's kind of, yeah. So
awesome. Well, I think that's it. Do you have any
all
other
right.
words of wisdom that you want to share with parents?
Yeah, it's just don't let a door shut in your face and think that's the end of it.
Okay.
I promise, one of our biggest attributes, I think, is Stacy and I are not afraid to be told no. So we'll ask. And even if we think we're going to get told no, we'll still ask. So
We'll ask again.
yeah, keep asking. Keep asking.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kari. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate it. And thank all of you for coming for another episode of Real
Thank
Talk with
you.
Amber. We'll see you soon.